Nowhere, because Will has something going on inside him. You do not have the right to walk up on stage and smack somebody in the face because they said words.
Jim Carrey just pulled back the curtain on one of Hollywood's most shocking controversies. After Will Smith's fall from grace following the infamous Oscars incident, word spread faster about what really happens behind closed doors in the entertainment industry. Jim Carrey has shown that success in Hollywood is not truly earned. It comes with hidden conditions few dare to reveal. Did Will Smith simply make a mistake, or was something far bigger already at play? Join us as we unveil how Jim Carrey exposed the real Will Smith. Jim Carrey breaks the ice. It all started with the 94th Academy Awards, which was supposed to be Will Smith's grand moment after years of movie and global fame. After decades of blockbuster success, he was the favorite to win Best Actor, and nothing seemed capable of stopping his rise. But then everything flipped in seconds. The $9 billion box office titan was at the peak of his powers, loved by audiences and respected by fellow stars. Then, on that night of the award, Chris Rock made a joke comparing Jada Pinkett Smith to G.I. Jane because of her shaved head, and it triggered something in Will. What happened next was captured by cameras from multiple angles and broadcast to over 15 million viewers. Will stood up with intentions, walked calmly onto the stage, and in a moment neither Chris nor anyone else expected, slapped Chris hard across the face and returned to his seat while shouting profanities at the comedian, telling him to keep his wife's name out of his mouth.
Oh, wow!
The audience just sat there silently, too stunned to react. They couldn't believe what they were witnessing. But the most shocking moment was what happened right after. Barely 40 minutes after he assaulted Chris on live television, Will was walking towards the stage yet again, and this time with a $1 million smile as he went to receive his award as Best Actor and received 2 standing ovations from most of the attendees in the room. The biggest movie industry in the world had just watched one of its biggest stars commit assault on live television, and their response was applause. That standing ovation became the focal point of criticism from a man who understood Hollywood better than most, Jim Carrey. His reactions weren't just about one incident, but about the entire system. Only 3 days after the Oscars and the shocking incident, Jim Carrey appeared on CBS Mornings and delivered one of the most cutting critiques to emerge from the fallout. His reaction went beyond Will Smith himself and took aim at the wider Hollywood culture that, in his view, rushed to protect one of its own. Jim said he was deeply disturbed by the standing ovation Will received that night. To him, applause wasn't a celebration. It was a humiliation for Hollywood itself. It was a spineless moment that showed how the industry had lost its moral compass. He said it indicated a turning point where Hollywood no longer deserved to see itself as the moral or cultural cool club. Jim did not stop at criticizing the standing ovation. He went further, explaining how he believed the situation should have been handled, making it clear that his perspective was rooted in principle rather than celebrity politeness. He said that if he had been in Chris Rock's position, he would have announced the very next morning that he was suing Will Smith for $200 million. He also stated that the footage would live forever, becoming unavoidable and permanently attached to Chris Rock's image. In his view, the damage caused by that moment would linger for years. He further said that while people are free to voice disapproval from their seats or on social media, no one has the right to walk onto a stage and physically strike someone for merely speaking. Jim's analysis went deeper than simple condemnation. According to him, Will had built an image that required protection, so Chris made a joke about Jada. It wasn't just offensive to Will as a person. It was an attack on the image that required constant protection and validation. Jim's perspective hit even harder from someone who had lived the same struggle. He'd spent years talking about his own spiritual awakening and his deep disappointment with Hollywood's fake. He had opened up about realizing that the Jim Carrey the world knew wasn't really him. It was just a mask, a performance, an illusion created to please everyone else. In multiple interviews, Jim has explained how he came to see his own celebrity persona as an illusion, a character he played that had little to do with his true self. In a 2017 interview that went viral, Jim stated that actors only play characters, and if they went deep enough into those characters, they would realize their own character is pretty thin to begin with. Jim's criticism of Will was informed by this understanding. He saw a man trapped inside an image, unable to separate his authentic self from the persona he had created. When that persona was threatened, Will lashed out violently, not to defend his wife, but to defend the illusion he'd spent decades building. But how did Hollywood respond to this unexpected act? From grace to grass. Will Smith may be Hollywood's golden duck, but it doesn't mean he'll get away with everything he does. After all, the industry has its own reputation to guard. As a result, the consequences of Will's actions hit him pretty quickly. On April 1st, 2022, Will Smith preemptively resigned from the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. A week later, the Academy banned him from attending any Academy events for 10 years. But the professional fallout was far more complex and devastating than any official punishment. Before the slap incident, Emancipation was set to be Will's follow-up Oscar vehicle. Will had even appeared on The Daily Show with Trevor Noah to promote his film Emancipation, his first move since the Oscars fiasco. Apple had paid $120 million for the drama about an enslaved man's journey to freedom. Will earned $35 million for his performance. The studio anticipated awards season buzz and prestige. Instead, the film was released quietly in December, 2022, with minimal promotion. Critics were lukewarm, audiences largely ignored it, and the awards season completely shut Will out. For the first time in recent memory, a major Will Smith prestige project failed to gain any traction whatsoever. Remember how Jim Carrey implied that the industry was protecting Will? That's because he was literally a cash cow, making them huge profits. But after smearing mud on his sparkling white record, his profitability declined. So the failure of Emancipation showed the industry's willingness to distance itself from Will when he stopped being profitable. Hollywood measures star power through various metrics, but one of the most important is the Q score, which gauges familiarity and appeal. Before the slap, Will's Q score was an impressive 39, one of the highest in the industry. By August 2022, 6 months after the incident, it had dropped to 24. By early 2024, it had fallen even lower to a pitiful 19. Will went from being in the top tier of beloved stars to having one of the lowest Q scores among major actors. Studios use Q scores to determine which actors can open a movie and justify big budgets. Behind the scenes, the real impact was felt in development deals and project commitments. According to Variety, Netflix had just greenlit Fast and Loose 1 month before the Oscar incident. The streamer immediately put the project on pause. An anonymous studio executive told Variety in March 2023 that everyone was waiting to see who would blink first. It wasn't so much what Will did, it was what he did after. That phrase, "what he did after," refers to Will's decision to stay at the ceremony, accept his Oscar, give an emotional speech without apologizing to Chris, and then dance at the Vanity Fair after-party. For many in the industry, that was the breaking point. The world stopped seeing him as a victim of pressure and started seeing him as a man avoiding accountability. Industry insiders agreed that if Will had been escorted out of the Oscars immediately after the slap, the whole situation might have been easier to forgive. Instead, he stayed, celebrated, and partied like nothing happened, which made it look like he believed he was untouchable. That decision turned what could have been a single bad moment into a symbol of Hollywood arrogance, and people didn't forget it. But as if the professional fallout wasn't rough enough, Will's personal life soon became a spectacle too, and an object of mockery. In October 2023, Jada Pinkett Smith began promoting her memoir Worthy, and what she revealed was completely shocking.
Ladies and gentlemen, with her new book Worthy, it is Jada Pinkett Smith.
She shared that they had actually been separated since 2016, that one bombshell rewrote years of public perception. Suddenly, that infamous 2020 episode where Jada discussed her entanglement with August Alsina hit differently. The world realized that when she and Will sat there discussing it for millions to see, they weren't even together. It had all been part of the public performance they maintained for the cameras. It didn't stop there. Jada revealed that even on Oscar night in 2022, when Will marched onto that stage to defend her honor, the two hadn't been a real couple in any sense for 6 years. Somehow, the public perception of Will shifted dramatically. He wasn't just the guy who slapped Chris Rock anymore. He was the guy who'd been lying about his marriage, performing for cameras, and building his entire public image on false pretenses. Every tearful moment, every Red Table Talk episode, and every family photo suddenly felt staged and manipulative. After all this damage, could Will Smith possibly make a comeback? The attempted comeback. By early 2024, Will Smith was in desperate need of a win. His career was in a pitiful state, his reputation was shattered, and the industry seemed to be keeping him at arm's length. That's when Bad Boys, Ride or Die, entered the picture.
You didn't have to shoot him, Mike. Get in the car.
The fourth chapter of his legendary action franchise wasn't just another sequel anymore. It was basically a lifeline. Since 1995, Bad Boys had been Will's most reliable hit machine, a series that consistently delivered success. The timing couldn't have been more strategic. If there was any movie that could pull him out of exile and rebuild his image, it was this one. Sony moved forward with a $100 million production budget and released the film on June 7th. The results were complicated, but surprisingly strong. Bad Boys, Ride or Die opened with $56 million domestically and $104.6 million worldwide in its first weekend. For comparison, Bad Boys for Life, released in 2020, opened with $60 million domestically and went on to gross $426 million worldwide. So, Ride or Die opened slightly lower, but still performed well enough to be considered a success, especially given the context of Will's tarnished reputation. People were curious as to why the movie still performed well. So, industry analysts immediately pointed to several factors that helped the film succeed, despite Will's damaged reputation. First, Martin Lawrence's presence helped carry the film. Fans were showing love to both stars, not just Will. Second, the Bad Boys franchise itself carried nearly 30 years of goodwill. It was familiar and fun. Third, Sony's marketing team nailed the strategy, pushing the movie as pure summer entertainment rather than a Will Smith redemption story. Will was really doing all he could to get back on top. According to The Hollywood Reporter, in the weeks leading up to the release, Will's team had started reaching out to major studios again for the first time since the scandal. Their goal was simple. If Bad Boys Ride or Die succeeded, they wanted to lock in Will's next major project fast. But that announcement never came. Despite the movie's success, no studio rushed to claim him. Not one major push to sign Will Smith to a franchise or prestige drama. The silence was deafening. Hollywood seemed happy to take him only on a safe bet, but nobody wanted to be the first to hand Will a completely original project. Bad Boys. Ride or Die succeeded largely because it was a sequel in an established franchise with a built-in audience. The question Hollywood is asking isn't whether Will can still draw audiences to a franchise film. It's whether he can open an original movie as a leading man. That question remains unanswered. Interestingly, the film itself even seemed to acknowledge the controversy. Reports confirmed that certain scenes included subtle nods to Will's real-life scandal. In one key moment, Mike Lowry's character faces consequences for reckless decisions, a moment many viewers felt mirrored Will's real situation. This meta-commentary was a calculated risk. By acknowledging the controversy indirectly, the filmmakers gave audiences permission to separate the character from the actor. It was essentially saying, "We know what happened. He knows what happened. Can we move forward now?" Whether audiences truly bought into this narrative remains debatable. But did audiences really buy into that idea? The response was mixed. On one hand, the movie scored a massive 97% audience rating on Rotten Tomatoes, showing many fans were ready, or at least willing to forgive. The box office told a slightly different story, though. Compared to Bad Boys for Life, the slightly lower earnings showed that some viewers had walked away for good. The question everyone is still asking is, where exactly does Will Smith stand now? Has the world forgiven him, or is he still walking on thin ice, one wrong move away from losing everything again? The dark side of Hollywood. Jim Carrey's criticisms of Will Smith and Hollywood's response weren't just about one incident.
Jim Carrey weighing in on Will Smith's Oscar controversy during a new interview with Gayle King for CBS Morning.
He was exposing something much larger, a system that protects powerful people as long as they're profitable and discards them the moment they're not. For 3 decades, Will Smith enjoyed a level of protection few celebrities ever experience. Stories that would have destroyed lesser careers, rumors about his sexuality, his unconventional marriage arrangement, and his aggressive behavior toward co-stars were either buried or spun into positive narratives. Take Janet Hubert's experience on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, for instance. When she had a contract dispute with Will in the early 90s, she was branded as difficult and effectively blacklisted from major roles for years. Will's team controlled the narrative, and the industry went along with it because Will was valuable. This is what Jim Carrey meant when he called Hollywood spineless. The standing ovation after the slap wasn't about supporting Will. It was about protecting the investment the industry had made in him. When someone has generated $9 billion at the box office, they apparently can't be held responsible. Instead, their crises are managed. Jim and other celebrities have pointed out, in different ways, the selective nature of Hollywood accountability.
He made it clear how he felt about Will Smith's actions on Sunday night.
Lesser-known actors have been canceled for much less serious offenses, while A-listers like Will get multiple chances to redeem themselves. An unknown actor who commits assault on live television would be arrested, prosecuted, and never work in Hollywood again. Will Smith committed assault on live television, but only received a 10-year Academy ban and was starring in a major summer blockbuster 2 years later. The difference was box office value. Will Smith may have the protection of Hollywood, but what about the man he smacked? Chris Rock doesn't care. Chris Rock finally spoke at length about the Oscars moment that stunned audiences worldwide nearly a year after Will Smith walked onto the stage and slapped him during the live broadcast.
But now, let's please welcome Chris Rock. Yes.
While Rock initially joked about moving on just months after the incident, his Netflix stand-up special, Selective Outrage, was the first time he fully addressed what happened and how deeply it affected him. Performing live from the Hippodrome Theater in Baltimore, Rock appeared both candid and exhausted as he spoke about the events that changed public conversations about comedy, violence, and celebrity behavior. He didn't downplay the incident or soften his language, but said it all plainly. Although Chris declined to press charges and avoided directly addressing the incident for months, it had deeply affected him. Selective Outrage became the moment where Chris finally unpacked the slap publicly. He addressed the slap in his own way, and honestly, he made it clear he wasn't there to play the victim or chase sympathy. Still, he didn't hide the fact that the experience hit hard, both physically and emotionally. Comparing himself to Derry Bucko, he joked that he just kept moving forward, but he was quick to crush one of the misconceptions floating around, that what happened was some kind of fair fight. Chris made it clear there was no fight, there was a mismatch. He pointed out the obvious. Will Smith once played Muhammad Ali, while he joked that his own movie roles rarely showed him shirtless. The size difference made the idea of a fair fight downright laughable. The title, Selective Outrage, Chris revealed, came straight from that Oscars night. He accused Will of misdirected fury, saying the outburst wasn't really about his joke. It was about everything else Will had bottled up. A moment of Will's private frustration finally exploded in public, and Chris Rock brought up Will Smith's now famous name and didn't hold back. He argued that Will's public humiliation over that saga was way deeper than the slap itself ever could be. According to Chris, he tried to reach out to offer his condolences when the story first broke.
You do not have the right to walk up on stage and smack somebody in the face because they said words.
But Will never picked up the phone. That detail stuck with him long before the Oscars tension. Even through the jokes, Chris let a little truth slip through. He was genuinely disappointed. He had admired Will Smith for years, from his early hip-hop days as the Fresh Prince to his reign as one of Hollywood's kings. He said the slap felt like a personal betrayal. Still, that moment on stage, Chris chose restraint.
Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it, all right?
He didn't swing back or blow up. Instead, he stood tall, kept his composure, and let the world see the difference between losing control and keeping it. His upbringing and discipline showed right there on live TV. Following public backlash, Smith issued a formal apology on Instagram and Facebook the next day. He referred to his behavior as unacceptable and inexcusable, directly addressing Rock. He admitted that he was ashamed and out of line. He has acknowledged that Chris may not yet be ready to talk. Chris, however, remains firm. During later stand-up appearances, including shows with Kevin Hart, he reiterated that words are not the same as violence. 3 days after the incident, Chris briefly mentioned the subject for the first time at a comedy show. saying that he was still processing it but promised to talk about it in the future. He said that Smith had not contacted him personally, nor had they spoken since the ceremony. Claims on social media that Chris had apologized were debunked by fact-checkers. Smith posted a YouTube video on 29 in which he addressed the incident and apologized to Rock's mother, Rock's brother Tony, Questlove, the other Oscar winners, and his wife Jada, saying he was deeply remorseful for his actions. While Chris Rock had chosen to move on, Will Smith is now neck-deep in another huge controversy. Another looming scandal. As of January 2026, Will Smith exists in a rather strange limbo. He's not completely cancelled. Bad Boys, Ride or Die proved there's still an audience for him in the right context, but he's not back to where he was either. In fact, there's too much damage to control. Will Smith can still work, but his collaborators seem to have moved on. And now, just when things seem to be settling down, another storm threatens to pull Will right back into the headlines. A violinist who toured with Will Smith recently filed a lawsuit against the actor, his music collaborators, and their management company, alleging retaliation, sexual harassment, and wrongful termination.
People that I've ever seen inhabit a screen.
Thank you, man.
You know, and then you had the Oscars, where in one night,
connected to a disturbing incident that occurred while he was on tour. The lawsuit filed Tuesday in Los Angeles County Superior Court was brought by violinist Brian King Joseph, who claims he was abruptly fired after reporting an alleged intrusion into his hotel room. He says once he reported the incident to Smith's team, he was fired and told he was lying about what happened. Joseph had been hired in late 2024 to perform on Will's Based on a True Story tour. The lawsuit states that Joseph and Will developed a close professional relationship before and during the tour, with Will allegedly making comments suggesting a unique and personal bond between them. The central incident occurred in March 2025, while the tour was in Las Vegas. According to the filing, Joseph returned to his hotel room to find that someone had unlawfully entered it. Inside the room were several unfamiliar items, including wipes, a beer bottle, a backpack, a bottle of HIV medication, and hospital discharge paperwork bearing another individual's name. Also left behind was a handwritten note addressed to Joseph.
It's like all the nerves in my body are screaming at the same time. They're burned.
Suggesting a private encounter and that the writer planned to return later. The complaint alleges that Joseph feared the unidentified individual might come back to engage in sexual activity without his consent. Alarmed, he contacted hotel security and notified representatives connected to Will and the tour. He documented the scene by photographing the items and requested to be moved to a different room for safety reasons. Joseph also contacted the local police department through a non-emergency line to formally report the incident. Hotel security later told Joseph there were no signs of forced entry. According to the lawsuit, security staff stated that only members of the management team responsible for booking accommodations should have had access to his room. Rather than conducting a thorough investigation, the suit alleges that tour management dismissed Joseph's concerns and accused him of making up the incident. Shortly after reporting what had happened, Joseph was terminated from the tour. The lawsuit states that he was told the production was moving in a different direction. However, Joseph claims this explanation was misleading, as another violinist was quickly hired to replace him. He believes the decision to fire him was retaliatory and directly connected to his report of the hotel room intrusion. The complaint further alleges that Will was involved in the decision to terminate Joseph's employment. It also claims Joseph had been deliberately groomed and psychologically primed for further sexual exploitation, though it does not detail specific acts beyond the alleged pattern of behavior and the Las Vegas incident. As a result of the termination and the events surrounding it, Joseph claims he suffered severe emotional distress, symptoms consistent with post-traumatic stress disorder, and significant financial losses due to the sudden end of his employment and damage to his career. Will Smith's legal team has strongly denied the allegations. His attorney stated that the claims made against Will are false, baseless, and reckless, and that they are categorically denied. The attorney added that all available legal options would be pursued to address the lawsuit and bring the truth to light. Representatives for Will and an individual associated with Treyal Studios management have been contacted for comment. but no additional statements have been released publicly. In the days following the filing of the lawsuit, Joseph shared a video message on Instagram that appeared to reference the situation without naming Will directly.
A legend, a Grammy winner, an Academy Award winner, a Hollywood blockbuster sensation, one of the biggest.
In the video, Joseph explained that earlier in the year, he had been hired to perform on a major tour with a highly influential figure in the entertainment industry, and he described how proud and excited he was about the opportunity. He said that serious issues arose during the tour, but that he could not discuss specific details due to the ongoing legal case. Will Smith has continued to strongly reject the accusations brought against him, stating that he intends to aggressively defend himself and pursue every legal avenue available to establish the facts. Is there any path to redemption for Will Smith, or will he continue to face troubles for his impulsive decision? Share your thoughts with us in the comments section. Remember to like, share, and subscribe for more. Also, click the next video showing on your screen. You will enjoy it.